What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the PikaPikaPaPa, and you all know how much I love macro level, hobby level information like this. And yes, in today's video, we're going to be looking at actual grading volumes in the TCG space for PSA, SGC, Beckett, all of those big names. We're going to be looking at the actual data there. Now, we're going to double click into PSA because let's be honest here, when you see the data here in a minute, PSA is here and everybody else is fighting for second place. But being able to understand what Pokemon cards are being graded the most, the sets that are being graded the most, the characters that are being graded the most. And remember, I said TCG, you're going to see more than just Pokemon on this, just a little bit of something else. But it's awesome to see that other characters in the TCG space can actually find some love here on this video. Now, the reason it gets me so excited is because I am always looking for macro level, hobby level information. And, the thing about grading is it encompasses all kinds of different collectors, right? You have the personal collectors who love having things graded. You have the investors who get things graded for long-term price appreciation. You have the shops out there who grade hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of cards in order to sell them and make a profit. So when I'm trying to keep a finger on the pulse of what's going on in the hobby overall, I think this video and the data within it is one of the very best tools that we have. Now, as I said, we do this every single month. It is a ton of fun. We have all kinds of cool data dives on this channel. So if that kind of stuff gets you excited, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. We're a small channel here, and those three small things go a long way in helping us out. So really appreciate it if you take the time to do that. So with that being said, let's get into what we always start off with. And here's the actual grading volume for those big four that we talked about earlier. Now, the graph on the left is PSA, SGC, Beckett, and CGC. And the graph on the right, we pull PSA out because let's be honest, with PSA on there, the other ones you can't even tell the movement because PSA's grading volume is so incredibly dominant over the others. Now, the interesting thing is PSA for the month of January, we talked about this last month, right? One of the things that we wanted to look at was how PSA's grading volume would trend this January versus last January, because last January we saw a lot of softness. Well, even though the TCG space was negative 5% year over or month over month, it is actually up 43% year over year. And overall grading volume in PSA is actually close to flat from December to January versus last year, December to January, we saw a significant drop. Now, when you look at the other three big companies right there, what you notice is there's a big difference in the TCG month over month space, right? So if you look at the far right, you see PSA is down 5% month over month in TCG. CGC is up 44% month over month in TCG. Beckett is up 23% and SGC is up 22%. And look at those year over year numbers. CGC's TCG space is up 69% and SGC is up almost 200%. That is absolutely crazy to see those kinds of growth in those other companies. Now, for the rest of the video, we're going to be looking specifically at PSA data simply because it would take too long and it'd be too complex to try and look at all the different grading card companies. And we don't have to look at all the other ones. Like the data set for PSA is so big that we can do that, but it is really impressive. I've always said this. I want another grading company to come up and challenge PSA. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know if it's going to be one of these three. I don't know if it's going to be a dark horse from the left field, but I do know this. All markets perform better with a 1A and a 1B. And right now it's PSA and everybody else picking up the scraps down below. So we shall see if somebody emerges in the future. But for now, PSA is the big dog on campus. So this is one of the things that we always start off with. And I find this incredibly fascinating and incredibly useful for me. So these are the most graded TCG sets at PSA. Now, no surprise to me, Japanese 151 is sitting at the top again. That's 2 months in a row. Now, I will say this. This list used to be dominated by Japanese sets. I mean, we saw months where it was 10 of 10 Japanese sets, 8 of 10 Japanese sets. Last month and this month, we're actually seeing an even split, 50-50, 5 Japanese sets and 5 English sets. PSA recently opened a grading center over in Japan. I think it was June or July of last year. So we saw a lot of big spikes in Japanese grading volume, but now it's starting to normalize a bit. We're starting to see more of an even split between English and Japanese cards. But where the big difference is just the overall volume, right? So Pokemon 151 here in the US, it was the number 2 set, the number 2 most graded set last month. It has dropped to number 3. And V-Star Universe, I don't know if that's ever going to slow down. It's absolutely insane. It's closing in on 400,000 cards graded from the V-Star Universe set, which is absolutely nuts. I mean, look at that. It was up 51% from December to January in overall grading volume. I mean, it's going to be really tough for some of these cards to maintain a long-term price position that has the ability to grow or that retains its current price point, because there's just so 400,000. I mean, look at the list. That column there to the left, it says total graded all all time. You have V-Star Universe at 382,000. The only set that's even close is the 1999 Pokemon game, right? The original set that came out at 754,000. Obviously that's about double V-Star Universe, but again, that's the original set from 1999. The volume, and look at Japanese 151's volume too. That's at 221,000. You can't compare that to any of the other sets on the list. So will they be able to maintain their value? Will these cards from these sets, be able to give us an opportunity for some long-term price appreciation with so many cards graded? That is yet to be seen. But the other thing I wanted to call out too is look at Shiny Treasures EX. It is already on the list. How crazy is that? So when Scarlet and Violet came out here in the US, we didn't see an English Scarlet and Violet set on this list until November, right? So you're talking, I don't know, 7-8 months after the Scarlet and Violet first set came out before we saw one even here on the list. And then Shiny Treasures EX is out, for just a short couple months, not even that at this point, and it is already on the list. So it is absolutely crazy to see the velocity that a lot of these Japanese sets are being graded. What does that mean? I don't know. We'll have to keep our finger on the pulse of it, but it is something worth noting and something worth talking about. Now, most graded cards, so these are the individual cards that had the most grading volume at PSA last month, and this is again an even split, 5 English cards, 5 Japanese cards. Now Pokemon, the Pikachu with gray felt hat remains in the #1 position, but it started to slow down a little bit. But again, look at the overall grading volume for that Pikachu with gray felt hat at 22,000 cards have been graded. Now I have been saving mine. I just sent my 2 through a couple days ago, so I'm going to add to that pile, but that is a big population for a ultra modern card, and one that a lot of people consider rare, right? Because I think the way it was launched was an absolute debacle. So, it's not really that rare if you look at the grading volume, unless 90% of the overall population out there is getting graded, which I don't think it is. But that is certainly something, worth noting. And then the Mew from 151, those come in at #3 and #4. And it's interesting to note that Pikachu has really been dominating this list, right? Like half of the cards on this list have the Pikachu name on it. And the other thing that I always like to call out, with the exception of Pikachu with gray felt hat, because in my mind, I think that's a relatively expensive card, but a lot of the cards on here are in that mid to low tier in terms of raw card value, which is what I would expect, right? These high tier cards, they don't have the velocity of grading. They're a little bit rarer, a little bit scarcer, and that's good. That's what I like, right? That's what we would expect with our higher volume cards. But it's really interesting to watch this list and how it evolves. Down there you've got the Yokohama Pikachu. We know that card has been really hot and had some crazy grading volumes, but I'm excited to see it drop 42% month over month right there. So lots of things to take away from this slide, lots of interesting movements in the single card space. Now, the very next one right here, this is my own little device, and this is something that I've been tracking ever since I started doing this video. And remember, I got into the Pokemon space when I did because I felt the momentum was shifting from the big ball sports, right, which I need to rename because that's absolutely terrible. But I was thinking baseball, basketball, football. I've been in that space for many years, and I just could feel the momentum shifting over to the TCG space. So I said here, we're going to combine the total grading volume for baseball, basketball, football, and we're going to compare it to TCG. Now, in purple, I've highlighted that ratio or the percentage. So in January and December, it was 70% and 81.5%, right? So the TCG volume only represented 70% of those 3 ball sports, and in December it was 81.5%. Now look at how much bigger that percentage is in January and December of this year. In December, TCG outgraded those ball sports, right? It was at 108.8%. Now in January we dropped a little bit, but guess what? It's still at 96%. That is absolutely insane. Again, when I see numbers like this, baseball, basketball, football, like those cards have been around for 100 years, right? And TCG just came out here in the US in 1999. So I think the momentum is there. I think this is going to continue to build. And I think as over this video history, as we continue to see it over the next 6, 8, 12, who knows, into the future months, it'll be interesting to see if TCG really starts to put the hammer to the other 3 and it just becomes a distant race for second. So really interesting stuff here. And I think it just goes to solidify how strong the momentum is here in the TCG space. Now, next one right here, and this was a shocker at first, but it's no longer a shocker. So these are the most graded subjects in the TCG space, and Pikachu's now #1. Like in the first month it happened, I was like, oh my god, I've been doing this video for so long, I've never seen Charizard not in the #1 spot. I'm sure it's just a fluke. Then it happened 2 months, then it happened 3 months. Well, here we are 7 months down the road, and Pikachu has yet to relinquish that #1 spot. Now I will say this, the gap is starting to close a little bit, right? Charizard has 38,000 cards graded in January, and Pikachu had 40,500. so a 2,500 card delta, which is nothing to shake a fist at. That's a lot of cards, and you remember when we did the most graded singles cards, you know, there were 5 of the 10 were Pikachu cards, so that all makes sense. But it'll be interesting to see if Charizard can reign supreme. You know, Charizard has seen a little bit of softness here in the market. We don't see a whole lot of Pikachu card prices popping off, right? Like, it's not like there's a lot of momentum shifting from that, but it is interesting to watch. The other thing that was really cool last month was we had the Monkey D. Luffy. Now, if I mispronounce that, don't flame me in the comments. I don't know anything about One Piece. But we had that card pop on the list last month, or that character, right? It came in at number 11, and you know, a lot of people in the comments said, hey, listen, it's number 11 now, but I promise you all the momentum is in One Piece. That individual character is going to pop, and you all were right, because it is now at number 6. It is going to be fascinating to see if that Monkey D. Luffy character becomes just a mainstay here on the list. Now, speaking of mainstays, we used to see a trainer on this list all of the time. This is the 3rd or 4th time in a row where we haven't seen a single trainer on here. Again, I don't think that's a bad thing or a good thing. It's just a thing, right? I think trainers got really, really hot there for a while, especially here in the US. Everybody was going after those Japanese ones, and then that just kind of trickled through to the US variants. But we haven't seen one on the list for a while, and I think that's a good indicator that kind of the trainer craze is slowing down just a little bit, because we certainly have some awesome trainers out there. Like Iono's I love the artwork, especially from that Paldea Evolved one. I even like the Miriam, right, from Scarlet and Violet base, and we still have a whole lot of awesome trainers bleeding over from Sword and Shield era. So I don't think it's a lack of awesome cards. I just think it's a shift of momentum, and it's just a shift of, of the collector's attention, right? That happens in the hobby, and we always say we want to look left when everybody else is looking right. So the other thing I wanted to call out, you all know how much I love Squirtle. My youngest loves Squirtle. Squirtle makes the list. We never see it on the list, so really excited to see Squirtle up here. I have a strong feeling that has something to do with that 151 card, which is absolutely fire. So the very next thing we look at here was something that I haven't shown on this list before, but this is something that is happening very quickly. And the fascinating thing to me is, I don't care if you like sports, hate sports, I don't care where you are in the world, everybody knows Michael Jordan, right? Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time, arguably one of the greatest athletes of all time, right? The guy's just absolutely all over the place. And throughout the course, since he's been around, right, he has had 1.33 million cards of Michael Jordan have been graded. And then look at Charizard. Charizard's at 1.24 million cards. Now, Michael Jordan's rookie year was like 1986, 1985, and then Charizard obviously came out in 1999. So even though Michael Jordan has more years of eligibility, we've almost seen as many Charizard as Michael Jordan cards graded. And for me, that just puts everything into perspective. It's amazing to think that Charizard has that many cards graded and is that close to what is arguably one of the greatest, ball players of all time in Michael Jordan. So I just thought that was something cool I added in. I don't normally do that, but we will see. As soon as Charizard overtakes Michael Jordan, maybe we'll do some type of party for our fire lizard friend there. Now, I always look at this too, and this isn't something that you should, take action on, right? This is gem rate broken down by era. So you're going to see you have the 2020s, 2010s, 2000s, and then you have PSA in sports and TCG, and it just shows you the overall gem rate by the different brands. And I think this is just a cool thing for us to take a look at. I don't think it's anything major. Like, I always say I don't want you to go out and grade with a particular brand because you think their gem rate is higher, or not grade with one because their gem rate is lower. You should always grade with the brand that you feel most comfortable with. But it is interesting to look at the PSA TCG space for the 2020s ultra modern cards. The gem rate is at a 70.5%. Now remember, that includes Japanese cards, which are getting graded through the teeth. Japanese has really, really high card quality, so not surprised to see that that high. And then you look at the Beckett TCG, right? That's at 78.4%. A lot of black label chasers who are sending the best of the best through, and black labels only get through at about a 2% clip. So I'm not surprised to see a very high gem rate there at Beckett as well. And then SGC TCG comes in at 56.8% gem rate, and CGC at 56.9%. And you can look down the chart if you want to. The 2010s, there's a big drop off there from the overall gem rate down, which you would expect. Those cards are a little bit older, but it's still pretty consistent across the board. So this is just a fun graph for us to look at. But again, this is actual gem rates by these companies for the month of January, broken down in sports versus TCG. And I always call it out. Like, we think the quality's bad here in the TCG space. Look at the sports card space compared to the TCG space. In every single category, it is much, much lower in the sports card space. So as much as we bing, and knock on Pokemon Company International for their print quality, at least you're not in the sports card space, because it's even worse over there. Now, The next one right here, this is TCG cards graded by month at PSA, and this is something that we've really been dialed in on. Now remember, that grading center in Japan opened in July, and that's where you see this absolute spike in grading card volume, right? Like, until that grading center opened, people in Japan who wanted to get their cards graded by PSA, they had to literally ship them overseas to California to get it done. Now, ever since PSA opened that, we've seen the grading volume go up. We've seen the Japanese market, I won't say get flooded, but we've certainly seen a ton of PSA graded Japanese cards come into the market. Now, in 2022 and 2023, it was a soft January, followed by some big February, March, April months. The question is, are we going to see that again this year? Now, we've already bucked the softness trend in January, so it'll be very interesting. Like, if the trend has been telling us that February, March, April are some pretty big grading months, then I can't even imagine what lie ahead for us, because we could see just some absolute insane numbers here in the TCG grading space. And the biggest thing for me is I love it when I see strong grading reports. Like, that lets me know that the TCG market is very healthy. People think that there's money there either now or in the future. So when I see TCG graded numbers like this, it makes me very, very excited. And again, just reaffirms the fact that I am happy to be investing in the Pokemon space. Now, the next one right here, this is just overall grading volume at PSA as a whole. And I include this because for me, it's very strong to have a good cardboard market in general, right? Like, I don't want baseball, football, and basketball card prices to crash, right? I want the overall hobby of investing in awesome cards, and awesome characters and awesome players. Like, I think that just bodes well for all of us. I want big money institutional investors to start looking at this space and going, hey, you know what? That's a great alternative investment. That can give either my shareholders or that can give myself, that can give people great gains, because I want their money to come into the hobby because they got cash to splash, right? And I would love to be selling them big ticket items further down the road. So it's very, very interesting to see. And again, we looked at the trends, not just in the TCG space, but now we look at the overall hobby, and 1.226 million cards graded in the month of January. I think PSA's now got their eyes set on 1.5 million cards graded in a month. And again, as I said just a minute ago, if seasonality tells us anything, we might get to that 1.5 million cards graded in a month overall, which would be really, really exciting. And again, listen, this kind of information here, this is a whole lot of knowledge about the overall macro level hobby. And if this kind of stuff excites you, hit that subscribe button. If you have questions or comments, drop them down below. And as always, if you like what you see, give us a big old thumbs up. I appreciate you more than I can possibly put into words. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have an epic day. Talk to you soon. See you, everybody.